scripty remember that night clearer than most. The highway stretched out like a black ribbon, the kind that swallows headlights whole. The trees leaned in on either side, tall pines bending against the weight of the fog. My dashboard clock ticked softly, though the static on the radio drowned it out, a faint humming in the silence. It was the kind of quiet that doesn't let you breathe, a stillness that makes you believe something is listening. I rolled down the window once, just enough to feel the cold air brush against my hand. That's when I noticed the smell, like damp earth, like something rotting far away, but close enough to taste. I thought I was alone on that road, but as the fog broke for a moment, I saw a shape, tall, pale, standing just beyond the shoulder, and when its head turned toward me, I realized I should have kept driving. I never should have slowed down. The highway through Nevada at night feels endless, blacktop stretching like a scar across the desert. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the stars looked faint, like ash scattered across a dark canvas. It was past midnight. The air was heavy with that desert silence that presses on the windows until you swear you can hear your own pulse. Only the hum of the engine kept me company. I had been driving for hours. The road was empty. The kind of empty that makes you wonder if you're the last person alive. The dashboard clock flickered at 12:41. My eyes burned from staring at the lines in the pavement. The fog was strange out here, low heavy, curling in ribbons that twisted between the headlights. I remember leaning closer to the wheel, my hands stiff against the leather, because something had changed in the air. A stillness, like the desert itself had stopped breathing. That's when I saw it. At first I thought it was a road marker, a pale post standing just beyond the shoulder. But the closer I got, the more I realized. It wasn't metal, it was skin, tall, thin, too thin to belong to anyone alive. Its arms hung low, bent at strange angles, one shoulder higher than the other. The head tilted, as though its neck was half broken, watching me approach. I slowed without meaning to. The fog broke around it. My headlights caught its body in full. Its skin looked white, not the color of bone, not the color of light, but wet paper, pale and soft, stretched too tightly across something that didn't fit. And then, its face no movement, no blink, no breath, just a wide smile, not human, not kind. A smile that belonged to something pretending. My chest tightened. I felt the cold roll in through the cracks in the car, even though the windows were shut. I pressed harder on the gas. The car lurched forward. I passed it in seconds, but the image burned into me. Its head turned as I went by slow, steady following me. I told myself not to look back. Keep driving. Don't look, but I did. The rearview mirror shook as the tires hit a seam in the road. And there it was, running, not walking, not chasing like a man would. It moved low, bent at the waist, arms dragging close to the ground. Its legs stretched too far, hitting the pavement in bursts that didn't match the rhythm of a body, and it was fast. So fast. The smile never left its face. It didn't even seem to move its mouth, but I could feel it, grinning, enjoying the chase. My foot pressed the accelerator, down until the engine screamed. 70, 80, 90. The fog rushed by, wrapping around the hood, clinging to the windows. I couldn't see more than a few yards ahead, but I didn't dare slow down. I glanced again. The mirror shook, blurred, but it was still there, keeping pace, not falling behind. For a moment, it felt like the world was only me and that thing. No desert, no highway. Just blackness and two figures locked together, and then it was gone. The mirror showed only the road, empty, silent again. I kept driving, mile after mile, my knuckles white, the steering wheel damp with sweat. Every shadow in the fog looked like a body. Every curve of the desert hills looked like it might rise and chase me. The clock flicked to 1:02. Only 20 minutes had passed, but it felt like hours. I didn't see another car that night. No headlights, not a single soul on that stretch of road. But in the silence, I swore I could still hear it. The rhythm of its feet. Long strides, keeping pace just beyond the glass. I drove until the sun came up, until the desert turned gold and the fog burned away. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still there, waiting somewhere along the shoulder, smiling. And every time I take a highway at night and the fog begins to curl across the asphalt, I think about that pale thing by the road, and I wonder if one night, when I'm too tired to notice, it might catch me. The desert felt emptier the later it got. Even the highway seemed to fade, like it was unraveling behind me the farther I drove. I had been running on fumes for miles, and when the sign appeared through the fog, a crooked rectangle glowing faintly with the words 24 hours, I pulled off without thinking. The lot was cracked, lines barely visible under the pale lamps. Only one other car sat parked near the corner, covered in dust thick enough to blur the windows. It looked abandoned. I killed the engine and stepped out. The air was colder than before. A strange stillness settled in my chest, the kind that makes every breath feel too loud. Inside the store was nearly empty, shelves lined with snacks that looked like they hadn't been touched in months. The hum of the coolers pressed against the silence, broken only by the buzz of a single light overhead. The man at the counter didn't speak. He didn't even nod when I walked in. He just stood there, staring at me as if he had been waiting. I pretended not to notice, grabbed a bottle of water, a pack of gum, anything to make the stop seem normal. But then a sound cut through the silence. Static. It came from a radio sitting on the shelf behind the counter. An old boxy thing with a cracked antenna. The dial wasn't moving, yet the static swelled and dipped like breathing. I froze, because the static wasn't empty. There were voices in it, at first faint, too faint to make out, then sharper like whispers coming through a wall. I thought it was a station glitch, just noise from far-off airwaves, but the words began to form. They weren't random. They were sentences. Still driving. He's here now. Don't let him leave. My chest tightened. I glanced at the attendant. He hadn't moved. His eyes never left me. I stepped closer, pretending to set my things on the counter. That's when the radio crackled again, and I heard it. My name, whispered clearly. Not once, but over and over. Every syllable broken with static, but unmistakable. My name, spoken by a voice I didn't recognize. The fluorescent light above flickered. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with the smell of dust and something damp. I took a step back. The man at the counter finally moved. Not much, just a tilt of his head, as though he was listening to, but his eyes, they didn't blink. I tried to speak, to ask if he heard it, but the words caught in my throat, swallowed by the hum of static. He's leaving. Stop him. Stop him now. The radio hissed, louder, sharper. I felt the skin on my arms rise in gooseflesh. It sounded less like broadcast and more like something breathing into the speaker. The man leaned forward. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Just silence. I grabbed my wallet, dropped a crumpled bill on the counter, and walked out. I didn't run. I didn't dare. Every step felt like it echoed in that still store, too loud, too human. Outside, the air hit me like ice. The fog was thicker, curling around the pumps, wrapping the lot in a pale shroud. My car felt impossibly far away. I unlocked the door with shaking hands, climbed inside, turned the key. The radio in my car flared to life before the engine did. Static, louder than it had any right to be, and buried in it, once again, my name. I yanked the knob, twisting, turning, pressing buttons. Nothing. The static only grew, filling the cabin until it felt like it was inside my head. I slammed my hand against the dash, and the sound cut off. Just silence. The engine roared to life. I pulled out fast, tires crunching against the broken asphalt. The gas station shrank in the mirror, fading into fog. For a moment, the radio was quiet, just the faint hum of the road beneath me. But then, one last crackle slipped through the speakers, and in a voice softer than breath, almost gentle, I heard my name again, and then nothing. Only silence. The desert at night always feels lonelier when you pull off the road. The endless silence of the highway is one kind of emptiness, but a rest stop in the middle of nowhere, that's a different kind. The lights were pale, buzzing faintly. Only 2 of them worked, casting long shadows across cracked pavement. Beyond the lot, the desert stretched on forever. No houses, no towns. Just miles of dirt and fog. I parked close to the restroom building. The air was dry, yet cold enough that every breath left a faint cloud in front of me. The door creaked when I pushed it open. Inside, the smell hit first. Bleach, damp tile, something metallic. The walls were tiled in dull grey. The kind of place no one cleans, just wipes down. It was empty, at least. I thought it was. The single mirror above the sinks was cracked across the corner. It reflected the flickering fluorescent light, bending the glow into sharp edges. I stepped up, turned the faucet. The water ran rusty at first, then clear. I splashed my face. The cold shocked me awake. When I lifted my head, my reflection looked back, only. Not quite right. The water on its skin didn't drip the same way. It clung too long. Beads of it held against the glass as if gravity had forgotten them. I blinked hard, leaning closer. It looked normal again. I exhaled, told myself I was too tired. Just tired. I dried my hands. Turned to leave, and that's when I felt it. The weight of eyes still watching. I turned back, slow, careful. The mirror hadn't moved, but my reflection it was still facing the glass, still looking straight ahead. Even though I was already half turned away, my chest went tight. I moved again, just to be sure. Lifted a hand, raised my arm. The reflection followed, but late. Like the glass hesitated, a second too long before catching up. And then, it smiled. My lips hadn't moved. My face hadn't changed. But in the mirror, my reflection smiled wide, calm, almost pleased. The lights above flickered once, buzzed loud, then steadied. The smile didn't fade. I felt the air shift around me. A hum so low I thought it might be the pipes. Or maybe not the pipes at all. I stepped back. The reflection stayed close to the glass, as if leaning forward. Its teeth still bared in that awful grin. I couldn't look away. Every instinct told me to run, but my feet were rooted to the tile. The silence grew heavier, almost pressing down on me. Finally, I turned, forced myself to move toward the door. But before I pushed it open, I glanced one last time. The reflection didn't follow. It lingered, standing exactly where I had been, still smiling, still watching, even as I stepped into the night air. It hadn't moved. The door swung shut behind me. The hum of the desert filled my ears again. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I walked fast to the car, gripping the wheel as if it could anchor me. When the headlights lit the empty road again, I swore I could still feel it. That smile not on my face. But behind the glass, waiting, the fog was thicker that night. So thick it seemed to rise from the pavement itself, climbing slow, curling against the windshield like smoke. The high beams barely cut through it. Everything outside the glass looked pale and blurred, as if the world had been erased. The highway was empty. No headlights behind me. No taillights ahead. Just endless white mist swallowing the road. My hands were tight on the wheel. My eyes heavy. I kept thinking about pulling over, but the shoulders of the road were too narrow, and there was nowhere safe to stop. That's when I saw it. A shape forming in the fog. Not on the shoulder, not on the side of the road, but in the center, right on the yellow line of the median dot. At first, it looked like a shadow, bent forward, hunched low, as if it carried weight it couldn't put down, each step slow, deliberate. I eased off the gas, heart starting to climb into my throat. The shape became clearer. It was a person, or something shaped like one, tall but twisted, body folded forward unnaturally, and in one hand, it dragged something long, something heavy, scraping against the asphalt with a faint, metallic ring. The sound cut through the silence, steady, sharp, like a chain being pulled one link at a time. I wanted to swerve around, but the fog was too thick. There could have been another car, another ditch. I had no choice but to pass it. As I drew closer, the figure straightened slightly, its head tilted toward my lights, its face hidden in the fog, but pale enough that I knew it was watching me. The chain dragged louder as my car reached it. My chest tightened with the urge to look away. I pressed harder on the gas. The car moved past, and at that moment, every light inside went out. The headlights, the dashboard, even the clock. Darkness swallowed me whole. The engine still ran. The tires still hummed. But the road was gone. The world was gone. For nearly a full minute, I drove blind. The fog around me a wall of black, my own breath ragged inside the silence. I couldn't see my hands gripping the wheel. Couldn't see anything then. I heard it, footsteps, slow, heavy, pacing against the rhythm of my car, keeping alongside me in the dark. One step, then another, and another. The chain scraped too, metal grinding against the pavement, right there, right beside me. I pressed the gas harder, praying the car would surge forward, leave it behind. But the footsteps stayed with me, steady, close enough that I felt each one in my chest. I wanted to scream, but the silence around me swallowed every sound. Even my breath felt trapped. Then the lights came back, a sudden flare, The road returned in front of me. The yellow lines, the fog, and the empty stretch of highway. Nothing was there. No figure, no chain, just emptiness again. But the sound of the footsteps. It didn't stop. It carried on for a few more seconds, like echoes that hadn't caught up, fading slower than they should have, until finally there was only silence. I kept driving, didn't stop, didn't dare look back, but the weight of it clung to me. The memory of something dragging itself alongside my car, close enough to touch, close enough to climb inside. Even now, I regret slowing down. Regret giving myself long enough to see it, because when the fog settles heavy on the road and the silence feels too deep, I swear I can still hear the scrape of metal keeping pace with me. The desert highway stretched endless, flat and pale beneath the glow of the moon. A thin line of cracked asphalt cutting through nothing but sand and brush. I had been driving for hours. The clock on the dash had stopped glowing, but I could tell it was deep into the night. That strange hour when silence feels heavier, when even the air seems to hold its breath. I was alone. Or at least I thought I was. The figure appeared on the shoulder. A small silhouette at first. Thumb out, arm stiff, motionless in the pale light. The closer I got, the clearer the shape became. A man standing perfectly still, as though he had been waiting. His clothes were simple, dark, a jacket that hung loose, trousers too long, brushing the gravel. I slowed without meaning to. The car rolled until the tires crunched against sand, and before I could think better of it, the passenger door creaked open. He climbed in without a word, sat with his hands folded in his lap, eyes forward, expression blank. The door shut softly, though I never saw him pull the handle. The silence returned, thicker now. The hum of the engine pressed against it, trying and failing to fill the space. I cleared my throat, asked where he was headed, but he didn't answer, just sat there, still, breathing slow, watching the road through the windshield as though it wasn't moving at all. I tried again. My voice sounded strange in the small space, too loud. Asterisk. But he remained quiet. I gave up, hands back on the wheel. I focused on the ribbon of highway unfolding in front of us. Then I heard him speak, soft at first, barely louder than breath, and the words were mine. He spoke in my voice, every syllable, every pause, perfect. I froze. My hands tightened against the wheel. He wasn't repeating things I'd just said. He was speaking thoughts I hadn't voiced aloud. My name, my town, the exact motel I had checked into the night before. Things I had never told him. The air inside the car grew colder. My breath trembled in the glass, faint mist spreading over the window. I couldn't bring myself to look at him. I tried to focus on the lines of the road, but the longer he spoke, the closer his words pressed, until it felt like he was speaking from inside my chest. I asked him to stop. My voice cracked. The request sounded pitiful in the stillness. He fell silent. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined it all. That exhaustion had twisted my senses, made me hear myself in his place. But then I glanced at the passenger window and saw it in the glass. His reflection was smiling. Lips curved sharp, while his face beside me remained still. My stomach sank. I gripped the wheel harder and pressed the gas, faster, as if I could outrun something already sitting inches away. The desert blurred by, mile after mile, the silence between us so loud. I almost wanted him to speak again, just to break it, but he never did. When the glow of a small town finally rose against the horizon, I slowed. The figure stirred at last. A single nod, not toward any place in particular, just down an empty side road. I pulled over, tires crunching again on sand. The man reached for the handle and without sound stepped out. He didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just walked into the dark, disappearing into the desert brush. The door clicked shut. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours, my body shaking as if I had been holding my breath the entire drive. I wanted to leave, to speed away, never look back. But something made me glance at the passenger door. It was locked from the inside. The handle hadn't moved. The latch still pressed down, as though he was still there. My chest tightened. I reached over with trembling fingers, slid the lock up, and the click echoed louder than it should have. I drove away without looking into the mirror, without daring to glance at the seat beside me. And even now, when I drive alone at night, I sometimes catch myself speaking under my breath. Words I didn't mean to say, words that don't feel like mine. And when the glass of the window fogs faintly beside me, I swear there's still another breath lingering there with my own. The road was empty. Miles of cracked asphalt stretching between pale fields. A thin ribbon vanishing into fog. It was late. The kind of late where silence feels endless, where headlights don't seem to reach far enough. I was fighting exhaustion, blinking too long, leaning forward just to keep my eyes open. That's when it darted out. Something low, grey, fast, crossing the center line in a blur. My hands jerked the wheel. The car veered, tires scraping gravel, before I corrected. The seatbelt dug into my shoulder. I came to a shaky stop at the edge of the road. Breath shallow, hands trembling against the wheel. I thought it had been a deer, or maybe a stray dog, but something in my chest told me to look. Slowly, I leaned toward the window. The ditch was deep, overgrown with weeds that shifted faintly in the night air, pale stems bending, as though something was moving just beneath them. I squinted, and saw it, not a deer, not a dog. A shape hunched low, limbs folded wrong, body too long in places it shouldn't be. It didn't move at first, just crouched there in the grass, head tilted at a sharp angle, as though it was listening. Then the sound, a faint clicking, like stones knocking together, one after another. Coming from inside its body, the thing shifted, the weeds parted around it, and I saw the joints too many. Arms that bent twice where they should have bent once, legs folded tight against its body, like an insect waiting to spring. The pale light from my headlights caught its skin, not fur, not scales, just smooth, stretched flesh that glistened faintly as it rose. It stood taller than I expected, unfolding slowly, piece by piece. The clicks grew louder, echoing against the still night air. I froze, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Afraid to breathe, afraid it would notice. Its head turned, the movement sharp, unnatural, and though its face was hidden in shadow, I knew it was looking at me. My chest tightened. The silence between us was unbearable. I thought about the empty road behind me, the long stretch ahead, nowhere to go but forward. The thing tilted its head further, and then it stepped, one limb at a time, bending and unbending, the clicking growing faster, closer, That broke me. My foot slammed the pedal. The car lurched forward, engine roaring in the dead quiet. Gravel spat from the tires in the rearview mirror. Fog rushed to swallow the road. But for a moment, just before it disappeared, I thought I saw it, climbing out of the ditch, standing in the middle of the highway, watching, the clicking still echoing faintly, long after it should have faded. I drove until my eyes blurred, until the gas gauge dropped low. And even then, I didn't stop, because the silence of the road behind me still feels heavy, as if something waits there, crouched in the weeds, unfolding slow, patient enough to find me again. The motel sat just off the highway. Its neon sign flickered pale red against the fog, buzzing weakly in the night air. A long row of doors stretched in a line, each one painted the same dull green. I was too tired to drive any farther. My eyes burned. My hands shook faintly from hours on the wheel. So when the clerk slid a brass key across the counter and mumbled room 12, I didn't think twice. The hallway was silent. Thin carpet muted my footsteps as I made my way down, counting doors until the number 12 came into view. The paint was chipped around the handle. The brass plate hung loose, as though it had been replaced too many times. Inside, the room smelled faintly of dust, and something older, like damp, would left too long in the dark. The lamp by the bed flickered once before holding steady. I set my bag down and sank into the mattress. That's when I heard it, scratching, soft at first. A faint, dragging sound coming from behind the wall. I sat up, listening. The noise stopped. The silence pressed heavy around me. I lay back down, closed my eyes, and there it was again, scratching, this time higher, closer to the headboard, like nails dragging slowly through the plaster. I whispered to myself that it was mice, or pipes, something simple. But the sound came again, longer now, steadier. I pressed my ear to the wall. The scratching paused, then came from lower down, right by the carpet. I backed away quickly, heart beating too fast. The room felt smaller now, the air heavy with dust. I told myself I wouldn't look again, that I'd just close my eyes and let the hours pass. But then I saw the bathroom door, half open, dark inside, the mirror faintly catching the lamp's glow. I don't know why I got up, why I stepped closer, but my feet carried me there, slow and unsteady. The bathroom was colder. The hum of the light above stuttered, leaving faint shadows across the tile. I looked into the mirror. At first it was just me, my face pale, tired, eyes rimmed with red dot. Then something shifted. Not me, not my reflection. The space behind me, letters began to form, faint and fogged, as if drawn on the glass by an unseen hand. Each line appeared slowly, deliberate, until the words were clear. "Don't stay here." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I turned sharply, staring at the empty room behind me. Nothing, only stillness. When I looked back at the mirror, the letters remained, sharper now, as though carved deep into the surface. The scratching returned, louder, coming from both walls at once, circling me. A restless shuffling that seemed to follow wherever. I turned, the bathroom light flickered once, twice, and went out. I stumbled back into the room, fumbling for the lamp. Asterisk. When it clicked on, the mirror was still dark, but the words glowed faintly in my memory. I didn't wait for dawn. I grabbed my bag, heart racing, and pulled the door shut behind me. The hallway stretched empty, silent as before. Every step echoed to long dot at the counter. The clerk didn't look up when I set the key down. Didn't ask why I was leaving early. Didn't say anything at all. I stepped out into the night air. The neon sign hummed faintly above, letters buzzing in and out. The fog pressed low against the parking lot, swallowing the row of doors behind me. I drove away fast. The highway stretched ahead, pale and endless. And in the rearview mirror, the motel lights flickered one last time before the fog closed around them. But even as the road carried me farther, I couldn't shake the feeling that the scratching hadn't been in the walls at all, that it had been in the room with me, waiting, listening, and if I had stayed until morning, I don't think I would have left at all. The desert at night feels endless. The road stretched out flat, straight as a blade. No towns, no lights, only the pale glow of the moon on the sand. I had been driving for hours. The air was dry. The windows cracked just enough for the wind to slip through, carrying that faint hiss of grit against glass. It kept me awake. The radio had been nothing but static. No stations out here. Just the steady hum of empty airwaves, until it changed. The dial shifted on its own. The knob turned slow, clicking from one dead channel to another. Then it stopped. A voice came through, clear, calm, low, as if meant for me alone. He described a car, 4 doors, dark paint, dust-caked across the bumper, a dent in the passenger side, just above the wheel well, my car. I tightened my grip on the wheel, my mouth dry. The voice didn't falter, didn't hesitate. He named the highway, spoke it smooth and certain, the very stretch I was on. He described the desert around me, the brush bent low from the wind, the pale lines painted on cracked asphalt. I leaned closer to the radio. The voice felt steady, almost soothing, but every word dug deeper into me. Then he spoke about me, the jacket I wore, the color of my shirt, the way my hands sat too tight on the wheel, even the way I leaned forward in the seat, straining to hear. I whispered a word, just to test, but the voice didn't repeat it, didn't acknowledge it. It kept moving forward, step by step, as if reading from a script already written. I turned the knob, static. I pressed the buttons, flipped through every channel, but the station was still there, always there. The voice grew slower now, each word deliberate, measured. He said the road had been long, that the desert could feel like forever, but that I was close, so close, my chest tightened. I tried to tell myself it was a prank, some signal bouncing from miles away, someone who guessed right. But then the voice said my name, not once, twice, as though to be certain I heard it. My foot pressed harder on the gas. The desert blurred past, but the voice only followed, steady, even. "You're almost here," it said. The words stretched thin in the silence after. A long pause, and then nothing. The station cut to static, flat, empty again. I listened for miles, for hours, maybe. Kept the radio on, though I wanted to rip it from the dash, but it never came back. Only the hum of the tires, the hiss of the wind through the cracked window, and the memory of that calm voice. "You're almost here." The desert stretched on, endless, but part of me still feels like I've already arrived, and whatever waits for me has been waiting a very long time. It was past midnight when I missed the sign. The exit came too fast. The turnoff sharper than it looked. By the time I realized, I was already winding down a narrow ramp. The highway lights vanished behind me. The pavement cracked. Dust stretched across faded white paint. I slowed, easing into what looked like a rest stop, but it felt abandoned. The lamps stood dark, every bulb shattered. The only glow came from my headlights, washing pale across a row of leaning pavements. 5 of them, side by side, all rusting in silence. I pulled in, gravel crunching under the tires. No cars, no vending machines humming. The air itself felt too still. When I opened the door, the night air pressed heavy against me, warm, dry, almost breathless. Then the first phone rang, sharp, metallic, too loud for a place so empty. I froze beside the car. The ringing stopped. But as I took a step closer, the second phone began, one after another, each payphone shrieking as I passed, like a row of eyes waiting for me to look. I tried not to, but the third rang longer, the fourth louder. The sound echoed off the cracked concrete, circling me. When I reached the last one, silence. I almost turned back, but my hand lifted, slow, before I could stop it. I picked up the receiver. Static hissed, breath behind it, and then a voice, turn back. Before the trees move, the words were calm, almost kind, but each syllable scraped down into me. I whispered into the receiver, asked who it was, asked what they meant. Only silence answered. Then faint, a click, and the same voice again. Turn back. Before the trees move. The line went dead. I placed the receiver back. The plastic cracked in my hand. The phone didn't ring again. None of them did. The air was too quiet now, the stillness heavier, like something waiting for me to stay too long. I walked back toward the car. My footsteps echoed against the pavement, sharp against the hush. I reached for the handle and paused. The trees, the ones at the far edge of the lot. They hadn't been that close before. They leaned inward. Branches bent low, their shadows stretched across the concrete, longer than the headlights should have allowed. I slid into the driver's seat, turned the key with shaking hands. The engine stuttered, then caught Dot in the rearview mirror. The trees seemed closer still, the dark shapes folding in, the branches curling like fingers. I pressed hard on the gas. The car lurched forward. The gravel sprayed out behind me. I sped across the lot and back toward the ramp. The payphones stayed quiet. The trees didn't follow. Not that I could see. The highway opened ahead, endless again. And I didn't look back. But sometimes, when I drive at night, I see a row of dark shapes at the corner of my eye, closer than they should be, waiting, leaning in. And I wonder if I really left that place, or if I only carried it with me. The desert highway stretched in a perfect line. Nothing ahead, nothing behind, just asphalt dissolving into the pale night. It was late enough that the air felt brittle, the kind of hour where the sky isn't black, but a hollow grey, where silence feels heavier than sound. My headlights painted the sand, spilling over the brush. The road shimmered with heat that shouldn't have lingered past midnight. I drove with the window cracked, listening for anything alive. There was nothing, only the hum of tires and my own breathing to steady. Too loud in my ears. That was when I caught it. Not beside me, but in the glass. The faintest shape, reflected in the windshield, lit by the glow of the dash. A face, just there, in the passenger seat. I didn't move. My eyes stayed locked on the road ahead, but in the corner of vision, the figure leaned, as if riding with me, still, silent, waiting. The breath in my chest slowed. I told myself it was a trick, light, fatigue, shadows bending against glass. But then, the smell arrived. Damp, rich, the weight of wet earth pressed into the air, like a field after rain, like soil freshly turned. It didn't belong here, not in the desert, not in my car. I turned my head, fast, before I could stop myself. The seat was empty, seatbelt slack, no impression on the cushion, but the smell didn't fade. It thickened, rising as if the vents carried it, as though the ground itself was inside the cabin, closing around me. I gripped the wheel tighter. The reflection blurred when I blinked, and then it returned. Clearer this time, not a shadow, not light. A face pale against the glass, lips parted as if whispering. I refused to look beside me again. The seat stayed empty when I glanced, but the reflection told another truth. I whispered without sound, asked what it wanted. The glass quivered, faint, as if the words were heard. Then the air shifted. The smell of soil deepened, heavy, almost wet. And I swear I felt grains of dirt against my shoes, though the floor was bare. The figure in the reflection tilted its head. Closer now, so close it seemed to breathe against the side of my face. I pressed harder on the gas. The road broke into streaks of pale yellow lines, still straight, still endless, but no matter how far I drove, the reflection never left. Sometimes it looked like a man, sometimes smaller, sometimes a hollow shape without features at all. Each glance shifted it, each breath thickened the smell, my eyes stung. I wanted to roll the window all the way down, let the desert air sweep it away, but my hand refused to leave the wheel. The glass trembled again, and for a single, breathless second, the reflection smiled. It was the only expression it ever made, just that faint curve of lips, faint and wrong, as though it recognized me. The desert swallowed the horizon. The silence roared inside my ears, and the smell of damp earth never faded. When I finally dared to glance, really glanced at the seat beside me, there was nothing there, just torn fabric, just dust, but in the windshield's glow, the face remained, closer leaning and smiling still. I drove until dawn without stopping, afraid of what I'd see if I pulled over, afraid of what would climb out of the car if I gave it the chance, even now. Sometimes, when the road is dark enough, the reflection waits for me in the glass, and the smell of damp soil fills the air again, like someone came with me and never left. The desert road stretched farther than my eyes could follow. No towns, no signs. Only the thin strip of asphalt unraveling in front of me, wrapped in fog that drifted low to the ground. It was late. Later than I should have been out there. The kind of hour where the world feels hollowed, emptied of anything living, where silence is the only thing that breathes. My headlights cut a narrow tunnel through the mist. Everything outside their glow felt unfinished, like shadows waiting to step closer. That was when they faltered. A faint flicker. The light dimmed, then swelled again. And in that sliver of darkness, something moved. I told myself it was brush, swaying. Maybe a dog, maybe nothing at all. But my chest tightened as the lights trembled again. There it was, at the edge of the beam. Low to the ground, limbs bent too sharp, the blur of something running, not toward me. Alongside me, the wheel felt slick in my grip. I didn't want to slow down, didn't want to test if it would keep pace. But the headlights dimmed again, stuttering like a dying breath, and each time they faltered, I saw it clearer. Pale skin stretched over a frame too thin, too fast. Hands dragging like feet, feet bending like hands. It never crossed in front of me, never strayed too far back, just matched the car, stride for stride, as though it was waiting. I tried to convince myself it was imagination, exhaustion painting shapes in the dark, but when the lights brightened fully, the shoulder was empty. When they faltered, it returned, always in the same place. The hum of the engine grew louder in my ears, my breath unsteady, my eyes burned from not blinking, and still, it stayed with me. I couldn't stop. I couldn't pull over. The road felt endless, every mile stretching thinner than the last. And that thing waited just outside the glow dot. Then the road bent, a bridge rising, steel rails glinting in the pale light. Water below, black and unnerving. As I crossed, the headlights flickered one last time. For a heartbeat, the road vanished in shadow. And there it was, closer than ever, pressed to the edge of the light, mouth parted, limbs bent in silence. But as the bridge passed beneath my tires, it stopped, the flicker ended, the light steadied, the reflection of the railing blurred behind me, and the thing was gone. I glanced in the mirrors, searching for any trace, but there was only fog, and the dark shimmer of water swallowing whatever had followed me. I drove faster after that, hands tight, eyes locked forward, refusing to glance at the edges of the road again. Even now, I don't know what it was waiting for, or why it vanished into the water as soon as the bridge began. But sometimes, when my headlights flicker, even for a second, I feel it running there again, silent, keeping pace, and I wonder if it's waiting for another bridge. One where it doesn't stop. The highway dissolved into white. Fog so dense it pressed against the windshield, swallowing the road, the sky, the horizon. It was like driving inside a cloud that had grown too heavy, too close. The world outside was gone. No trees, no hills, no stars. Even the lines painted on the asphalt blurred, fading beneath the pale light. I slowed down. The engine hummed low, steady. My breath filled the cabin louder than it should have. Every sound felt smaller, dampened by the fog, as though the air itself absorbed it. It wasn't silence. Not exactly, but it was emptier than silence. Like being wrapped in cotton, the tires hissed across the pavement. I leaned forward, squinting, waiting for the next curve, the next sign, anything. The world had shrunk to a narrow tunnel of grey. That was when I heard it. My name, soft, stretched, pulled thin by the mist. It didn't come from the radio, didn't come from the car. It came from outside. I froze. The wheel slipped a little beneath my fingers, and then it came again. My name, drifting through the fog, like someone calling from far across a field. The air felt heavier in my chest. I told myself it was just my mind echoes in the hum of the tires. But the voice didn't stop. It was familiar, too familiar. It sounded like my mother. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks, but I knew the way she said my name, the way her voice rose slightly at the end, gentle, questioning. It was hers, and then another voice, Deeper, my brother, calling me, sharp this time, like he couldn't see me in the haze. I tightened my grip. My heart climbed higher in my throat. There was no reason, no way they could be here. The fog pressed closer to the windows, and the voices multiplied. Some I knew, friends I hadn't seen in years, their tones unmistakable, carrying from the blankness beyond the glass. Others were strangers, calling, whispering, repeating my name like they were trying it on their tongues. I kept driving, kept my eyes locked on the vague strip of road, but every few seconds the voices leaned closer, clearer, as if they walked beside the car. One of them laughed, a sound I remembered from childhood, when the lights in our old house flickered and my father said it was nothing. The laugh belonged to someone who wasn't there anymore, someone long gone. The fog rippled. It didn't move with the wind. It shifted as though something inside it was brushing past. I wanted to shut my eyes, but the road was all I had. If I looked away, I felt the car would vanish into nothing. The voices thickened, layered over each other. Some begged, some taunted, some pleaded with me to stop the car, to step outside, to listen closer. One pressed tight against my ear, clearer than the rest. It whispered my name slowly, stretching each syllable until it didn't sound like my name anymore, until it was only a sound. My throat tightened. I forced my foot heavier on the gas, but the fog didn't thin. It only grew denser, a wall closing in tighter with every mile. I thought of pulling over, just to wait, just to breathe, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Something in me knew if I stopped, the voices would step out of the fog and climb inside. The wheel vibrated faintly. The road tilted. I hadn't realized I was drifting. I pulled back, swallowing air like it might anchor me then. Just as sudden as it began, the voices stopped. The silence returned. Deep, suffocating, the kind of silence that made me wonder if I'd gone deaf. The fog thinned as though it had grown tired. Shapes appeared, distant trees, the outline of hills, the pale gleam of the next mile marker. The road stretched forward again, but I couldn't shake it. The echo of those voices still clung to the back of my skull. Not imagined, not memory. They had known me. They had spoken to me, and even now, when the fog rolls low across the fields, I find myself listening too closely, because sometimes, in that damp hush, I hear my name again, gentle, familiar, waiting for me to answer. The desert highway stretched on without end. It was close to midnight. The air was still, heavy with heat that hadn't yet escaped the asphalt. The world outside the headlights was black. I drove slower than usual. The road was too empty. The silence pressed against the windows, a silence so complete it felt deliberate. I could hear the hum of the tires, the faint rattle of loose change in the cup holder, my own breath, steady, echoing in the cabin. Then I saw her, a figure, standing in the middle of the road, pale, white fabric glowing faintly under the beams, as though the light belonged to her. I slammed the brakes. The tires screamed against the asphalt. The wheel shook under my grip, and then she vanished beneath the car. There was no sound, no impact, nothing at all. I sat frozen, hands trembling against the wheel, my chest locked tight, waiting for the thud that never came. Slowly, I opened the door. The desert air brushed against me, dry and endless. The engine ticked as it cooled. The night was too still, I stepped out. The headlights cut into the road, stretching far ahead. But the asphalt was empty. Nothing moved. I looked under the car. Only shadow, no body, no trace of fabric, no mark on the road. The silence deepened, thick as the heat. I felt the edges of the desert leaning closer, listening. Then it broke, soft, fragile, crying. It came from behind me, low, muffled, like someone trying not to be heard. I turned slowly. The sound was coming from the car, not the road, not the desert. From inside the trunk, my chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. The crying grew sharper, breaking into small gasps, as though someone was curled tightly inside, pressed against the metal. I stood there, unable to move. The key trembled in my hand, slick with sweat. I thought of opening it. I thought of walking away. Both felt impossible. The crying shifted, closer to a whisper now, thin and cracking, but words struggled through. I couldn't make them out. Only the rhythm of a voice that sounded like pleading. The desert stretched around me, endless and empty. But the car no longer felt empty at all. The air turned colder. I could see the faintest thread of breath leave my lips, and the whisper from the trunk pressed tighter against my ears. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I climbed back inside, shut the door, and locked it. The crying didn't stop. It seeped through the back seat, soft, constant, like the faint rhythm of a child. I pressed the accelerator, faster, faster, leaving the patch of road behind. But no matter how far the headlights carried me, the sound followed. A voice in the trunk, broken and pale, crying as though it had always been there, waiting for me to notice. And sometimes, when the nights are quiet enough, I still hear it. A fragile breath, a sound I can't escape, the weeping that never left the trunk. The highway was empty, just a thin strip of asphalt, stretching into the fog. It was autumn. The air had that pale chill, the kind that clings to the glass. I remember the hum of the tires, the steady rhythm, almost like a lullaby. Every few minutes, another green sign appeared, mile markers, silent, identical, one after another. I wasn't paying much attention at first. The numbers blurred together. 2-30-2 until I saw it. 2-3-7, the sign leaned, crooked, as if something had pushed it down. And beneath it, a figure, standing perfectly still, pointing at my car. As I passed, I kept driving. Didn't slow down. Didn't look back. My hands felt cold on the wheel. I told myself it was a trick of the eyes. Fog playing with the light. A branch, a shadow. But then the GPS blinked. Continue straight, it said. 4 more miles, and soon. Another sign appeared. 2-3-7. Same bend, same tilt, and the figure again. Still pointing. I tightened my grip, checked the clock. It was nearly midnight, though I swore it had just been 11. The highway was silent. No other cars, just me, and the endless white fog pressing against the glass. Another half mile. Another green glow ahead. My chest sank. 2-3-7. The sign looked the same, but the figure had moved closer to the road, its arm raised higher, pointing more directly at me. I pressed harder on the gas, but the GPS recalculated. Continue straight. For miles, the voice was calm, to calm, repeating. The loop tightened, every sign the same, every mile identical. 237 237 2-3-7 dot. I began counting, under my breath, seconds, breaths, just to prove that time was still moving. But when I looked down, the clock hadn't changed. Always 12:03, frozen in pale blue light. My reflection in the windshield looked strange. Not delayed exactly, but softer, like it wasn't quite me anymore. The figure was closer now. I could almost see its face. Not features, just the outline, like a shadow cut from the fog itself. Each time I passed, it moved. Not walking, not stepping, just nearer, as if the space between us folded in at one point. I swear it touched the glass my breath caught. But when I blinked, it was back by the sign, waiting. I thought about pulling over, but the shoulder was nothing but gravel and mist. No lights, no houses, no way to know if the ground would hold the weight of the car. So I stayed on the asphalt, and the loop continued. Sometimes the figure pointed. Sometimes its arm hung low, and once it raised its hand as if waving. That was worse, so much worse, because I knew. It was aware of me. The GPS crackled, the voice distorted. Continue straight, 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 and then silence, just static on the screen, and the numbers glowing again. 2-3-7. I tried the radio, only hiss, like something breathing just behind the speakers. My pulse filled my ears. I wanted to turn back, but every sign was the same. There was no back, only forward. I don't know how long I drove, minutes, hours. It felt like days. The figure never left, sometimes farther, sometimes so close I couldn't see past it. The headlights blurred against its shape, never touching, never revealing, until finally, the GPS voice returned, clear, calm, you have arrived. But there was nothing. No exit, no rest stop, no road at all, just the bent sign. Mile marker 2-3-7, and the figure standing beneath it, waiting for me to stop. The car slowed without me pressing the brake. The engine hummed low, almost a whisper. I held the wheel tight, breath sharp in my throat. The fog pressed closer. The figure lifted its arm again, pointing not at the car this time. At me, straight through the windshield. The tires rolled to a stop. The GPS clicked off, and the silence was complete. I sat there, frozen, hands trembling on the wheel. I couldn't look away. The bent sign swayed. The figure stood still. The fog thickened until the world beyond was gone. Only mile marker 237 remained, and I don't remember leaving it. I don't remember arriving anywhere else. But sometimes when I drive at night, the GPS blinks, the clock freezes, and in the distance, I see a crooked sign, glowing pale green dot, 2-3-7, waiting for me. It was late. A narrow country road, the kind that feels endless when you're alone. The night was heavy with fog, trees pressed close on either side. The pale glow of my headlights seemed to dissolve into it. The hum of the engine was steady, almost comforting, until I noticed it wasn't the only sound. There was something else, soft, rhythmic, breathing, slow, drawn out, as if someone sat just behind me. In the back seat, my chest tightened. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The seats were empty, dark fabric. No movement, but the breath continued. Low, warm, almost brushing the back of my neck. I told myself it was the vents, airflow from the heater. But when I reached out and switched it off, the sound didn't stop. In fact, it grew louder, closer. I felt my throat dry, hands gripping the wheel too tightly, eyes fixed forward. The road twisted, dipped. Fog rolled over the hood of the car. Still, behind me, the steady inhale, the slow exhale. I tried not to react, tried to pretend I hadn't heard, but every breath seemed synced with mine, like it was waiting for me to notice. I checked the mirror again. The seats stared back at me, empty, silent. But my ears, they betrayed me. The sound was so clear. Too clear, I could almost feel the weight of lungs filling. Just behind my left shoulder. I pressed harder on the gas. The speedometer climbed, but the breathing never faltered. If anything, it quickened. Matching my panic, I whispered under my breath, "Please." But the road swallowed the word. Another mile, another sharp curve. I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled the car over. Gravel crunched under the tires. The engine idled low, and the breathing continued. Not behind me now, not far away. Right there, close enough to stir the hair at my ear. I froze, didn't turn my head, didn't dare. I just listened, each inhale brushing against me, each exhale warm against my skin. I held my own breath, and for a moment, it stopped too, as if whatever it was, waited when I finally gasped for air. It started again, deeper, hungrier. The rearview mirror reflected only darkness, but I felt the presence filling the small space, the invisible weight pressing close. I thought about opening the door, running into the trees, but the fog was too thick. The silence to complete. The car suddenly felt like the only place left in the world, even if I wasn't alone in it. My hands trembled as I reached for the ignition, turned the key. The hum of the engine rose again, but the breathing, it rose louder, stronger. I pulled back onto the road, eyes fixed ahead. Afraid to blink every few seconds, I checked the mirror. Every time, empty seats. Yet the warmth stayed, leaning closer, breath at my shoulder. I tried the radio, static, a harsh hiss that filled the car. For a moment, I thought the breathing was gone, but beneath the static, I heard it still, slow, insistent. No station would come in, no voice, no music, only the endless hiss and the sound of something alive, inches behind me. The road stretched on, mile after mile, fog unbroken. At some point, I realized I no longer heard the tires on the asphalt, only the breathing. It filled the whole car, like it wasn't behind me anymore, like it was everywhere, inside the vents, inside the mirror, inside me. I shut my eyes for half a second. When I opened them, the clock on the dashboard was frozen. 2:14, I tapped it. But the numbers didn't change. The breath thickened, slow, drawn out, until I felt my own chest rise and fall in time with it. I wasn't in control anymore. It was guiding me, pulling me deeper into its rhythm. The mirror showed nothing, but I knew if I kept staring long enough, eventually, something would stare back. I don't remember when the road ended, or if it ever did, but even now, when I drive alone at night, sometimes the heater's off, the windows sealed, and I still feel it, a soft breath, warm at my ear, waiting for me to listen. The road stretched out in front of me, empty, cracked, and washed pale beneath the glow of the headlights. It was late, a little past midnight, the kind of night when the air feels thin and the silence carries farther than it should. I'd been driving for hours, nothing but fields, and the occasional shape of trees pressed against the horizon. Then I saw it. The old overpass, or what was left of it, stone and rusted metal, sagging against the weight of time. A bridge that didn't lead anywhere anymore. Its road had long been closed, fenced off, and forgotten. Still, it hung over the highway, a skeleton above the living. I slowed down without meaning to. My hands tightened on the wheel. The thought came uninvited, that something might be waiting up there. The beams creaked. The shadows looked too heavy, and then, as I passed beneath it, something dropped. The car jolted. The roof groaned. Metal against metal. A long scrape like nails dragging down a coffin lid. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The scratching didn't stop. It moved across the roof, dragging toward the back of the car. I couldn't bring myself to look up. I didn't want to see a shape pressed against the glass above me. My foot pressed down harder. The tires hissed against the road, but the weight stayed, clinging until it did in single quotes. With a sudden thud, it leaped away. The roof shook once, then silence. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined it, that the sound was the bridge shedding rust, the car reacting to nothing, but my hands were shaking. My chest hurt from holding in air too long. Slowly, I looked into the rearview mirror. The bridge loomed smaller now, sinking into the dark. But I wasn't alone in the reflection. 2 eyes, glowing, fixed on me from the top of the overpass. They didn't blink. They didn't move, just watched. I kept driving. Every instinct begged me not to stop, not to look again, but even as the distance grew, I could still feel them, pale, patient, following the trail of my car. I didn't hear the scratching anymore, yet the roof still felt heavy, as if the weight had never fully left, and the night stretched on, with silence pressing against the glass, like it was waiting for me to pass beneath another bridge. The highway was empty, just a ribbon of cracked asphalt winding through pale fields. The clock on the dashboard glowed to 17 a.m. The air was heavy, windows fogging faintly at the corners. My hands gripped the steering wheel harder than they needed to. The car was quiet, too quiet. Only the hum of the tires, steady and low. Then the radio flickered. A faint click, static, washed across the speakers. At first, I thought nothing of it. Old cars do that, lose the signal in the middle of nowhere. But this wasn't empty static. There was a rhythm in it, like waves folding back into each other. A rise, a fall, almost like breathing. I reached for the knob. The static pulled tighter, compressing into a low hum. It reminded me of a throat clearing, something preparing to speak. The hum stretched, shifting pitch, and then it began to sing, a single, drawn-out note, thin, quivering, too human to ignore. I froze, hand still on the dial. The melody slid downward, then rose again, carefully, like testing the air, and I knew it. Not instantly, but in the deep recess of memory. A lullaby, my grandmother's lullaby. The one she whispered when sleep wouldn't come. The one she sang the night she passed. But here, it sounded wrong. Her voice had always been fragile, gentle. This was too deep, too slow, like someone much larger was trying to wear her voice. My chest tightened. I whispered the words under my breath, hoping to steady myself, But the radio changed with me, as if it heard. The distorted voice echoed the lyrics in perfect time. Every line I whispered, it sang back to me, half a beat too late. The air in the car thickened. Breath clung to the windshield. I couldn't see the road edges anymore. I tried turning the knob again. Click. Nothing. The song didn't break. It only grew louder. The deeper it sang, the more the speakers seemed to tremble. A vibration I felt through the seat, through the bones in my spine, and yet, beneath the heaviness, I could still hear her. The faintest trace of my grandmother's voice, buried under that warped, impossible register. Tears stung my eyes. I didn't know if it was grief or fear. I slowed the car, pulled over by the side of the highway, hazards clicking faintly in the dark. The song carried on, unbroken. Patient, the words were familiar, but they bent at the edges, as if the singer couldn't pronounce them right, like a child learning to speak, or something imitating language. I shut my eyes, held my breath, waited. The voice dropped lower. A rumble now, barely musical, then silence. The radio gave a final pop, and the car was still again. No hum, no lullaby, only my heart beat against the quiet. I sat there for minutes, maybe longer. The frost on the glass began to melt. Finally, I turned the key, ready to drive, to leave it behind. But as the engine stirred, the radio lit once more. No static this time, no voice, just a single, soft note, the first note of her lullaby. Then nothing, just silence, waiting, as if it could sing again whenever it wanted to. The road was empty, a 2-lane stretch of cracked asphalt. No streetlights, only the pale glow of my headlights cutting forward into the dark. The season was late summer, the air still heavy with warmth. But when I lowered the window, the night felt wrong. The cornfields stretched for miles on both sides. Tall stalks, silent, their tassels swayed slightly. Even though no wind touched them, I kept driving. The hum of the engine was steady, but faint static slipped into the radio. No station, just a low hiss. Then I noticed them. Eyes. At first, only a few. A faint glimmer between the stalks, yellow, round, reflecting back against the headlights. I slowed down, pressing harder against the wheel. The eyes didn't blink, didn't scatter like deer would. They only watched. The further I drove, the more appeared. Dozens, then hundreds. They rose and fell between the rows of corn, shifting as though the entire field was alive. No shapes, no bodies, only eyes. The static grew louder, like whispers crawling through the speakers. I reached to turn the dial, but it wouldn't change. The road narrowed. My headlights swung along the corn. For a moment, I thought I saw movement deeper in, something heavy pressing through the stalks, rows bending in waves, as if something enormous slid beneath them, a ripple spreading toward me. I gripped the wheel tighter, every breath shallow. The engine felt weaker, like the car resisted going forward. The eyes began to rise higher, too high to belong to animals. Some floated above the rows altogether, hung there, suspended in the air, and then they blinked, not all at once, but in a slow rhythm, as if they shared one breath. The static broke, just for a second. A voice slipped through. I couldn't make out words, just syllables, drawn out, stretched thin. I pressed the gas. The car lurched, groaning, but it moved. The corns seemed to bend closer, almost leaning over the asphalt. Eyes followed on both sides. rows of them, pacing my speed, always watching. Never fading, my hands trembled on the wheel. Every instinct begged me not to stop. The road curved left, and as the beams swept across, I saw it a figured dot standing at the edge of the field, still unmoving. Its body was lost in the shadows, but the eyes weren't on its face. They covered it. Dozens of them, blinking in unison. I swerved slightly, my heart hammering. When I looked back, it was gone, but the rows of corn rippled again. Closer now, closing in, the static flared, sharp and loud, and beneath it, a low hum, not mechanical, not human, something deep, vibrating through the air itself. The eyes drew nearer, pressing against the very edge of the road. They glowed brighter, as if feeding on the headlights. Every blink, brighter still. I couldn't tell if I was moving anymore. The road seemed endless. Corn on both sides. Eyes above, below, everywhere. And then the silence hit. No hum, no static. Only the sound of my breath. The headlights flickered once, twice, then blacked out. For a second, I sat in total darkness. The world around me smothered in shadow. When the lights returned, the road was clear, no eyes. No figure, only empty stalks swaying softly. The car rolled forward as though nothing had happened. The radio hiss was gone. Only silence. But in the rearview mirror, I saw them. A field of eyes, lining the road behind me, glowing faintly in the distance, watching, waiting. And I realized they hadn't been following me at all. I had driven straight into them. It was late, the kind of late when the horizon disappears, and even the stars seem farther away. I was driving through the countryside, past silent barns and crooked trees. The map said the road should keep going, but the asphalt just ended, a straight line of black, broken at the edge, like someone had erased the rest with a single sweep of their hand. Beyond it only darkness, no gravel, no dirt, just nothing. I slowed to a stop. The hum of the engine felt too loud, pressing against the silence outside. I turned the headlights down the void, expecting to see dust, weeds, maybe a trail, but the beams dissolved into the emptiness, as if light itself couldn't cross it. I opened the door. The air was damp, heavy, carrying the faintest smell of wet earth and metal. My shoes scraped the broken asphalt, and that's when I saw them. Tire tracks fresh. They ran straight across the line where the road ended, and disappeared into the black. I crouched down, touching the grooves, still sharp. No rain had blurred them. Someone had driven here not long ago. My breath slowed, matching the rhythm of crickets in the grass, and then, even they went quiet. The silence pressed harder, like it had weight. I stood and stared into the void. It didn't feel like night. It didn't feel like distance. It felt unfinished. A curtain pulled across the world, but behind it, something waited. The headlights hummed softly, straining against the nothingness, and in that pale light, the tracks seemed to deepen, sink, as if the car that made them had been swallowed. The wind shifted. Tall weeds rustled against the guardrail. Though there was no breeze, I thought of the driver, whoever they were, where they had gone. I listened for an engine, a horn, any echo across the fields. Nothing, only the faint static of my own breath, rushing in and out. The map on my phone glowed in my hand. It insisted stubbornly that the road continued for miles. that there should be bridges, intersections, houses. I tilted the screen toward the black. The little blue dot pulsed, already halfway down the invisible path, like I was standing in a place that didn't exist. I stepped closer. The edge wasn't jagged, it was smooth, like poured glass, broken clean in a perfect line. I nudged a pebble forward with my shoe. It rolled once, twice, and vanished. Not down, not away, just gone. The air trembled faintly where it had disappeared. If the void had swallowed it in a single breath, I should have turned back. But I stayed, listening, staring. The tire tracks reached out from behind me, stretching over the edge like veins, desperate, unfinished. I thought I heard a low hum, far away, or maybe it was closer. It flickered in and out, like static between stations. I held my breath. The hum steadied, and then a second set of tracks appeared, right beside the first I hadn't seen them before. They hadn't been there. The grooves were shallow at first, then sharper, deeper, pressing down into the void as if a heavy vehicle had just rolled past. My chest tightened. The silence deepened again. The headlights flickered, weak against the line. For a moment, I thought I saw movement inside the black-like pale headlights turning, waiting for me, then nothing. The weeds whispered again. Though the air was still, I stepped back, heart hammering, but even that sound felt muffled, pulled thin. The phone map blinked once more. The blue dot moved forward without me, creeping down the road that wasn't there. I closed the door of the car. The engine rumbled, anxious, wanting to leave. But my eyes stayed fixed on the edge, on those tracks, vanishing into nothing, and the faint impression that something was waiting for me to follow. The road was empty, a two-lane strip of cracked asphalt stretching through the hills. Summer air pressed against the windows, heavy, even though it was past midnight. The headlights only reached so far. Beyond that, the world dissolved into black fields and silence. I had been driving for hours. No radio, no phone service, only the hum of the tires and the faint rattle of something in the trunk. But then, I saw it. At first I thought it was a shadow, something thin, low to the ground, just ahead of the car. But as I blinked, it straightened. It was taller than the hood, and it began to run, not away. Beside me, my foot pressed harder on the gas. 70, then 80. The old engine groaned, but the shape kept up. Its movements didn't match the world. Limbs bending wrong, hitting the dirt shoulder without slowing, flinging dust that never seemed to settle. I turned my head just once, and I swear, it was smiling, the kind of smile stretched too wide, too eager, like it had been waiting for me. The wheel trembled under my grip. I pushed to 90, but it was still there, closer now. The window glass between us seemed thin. I couldn't hear footsteps, only the faint scrape of nails dragging along the side panel. Then nothing. It was gone. For a moment I thought maybe I'd left it behind. The speedometer needle hovered near the red. The road ahead was still empty. The field swayed with a breeze I couldn't feel. My chest lifted once with relief. And then the laugh began. It was faint. At first, it could have been a trick of the tires, a whine under the hood. But no, it was a laugh broken, stuttered, as if someone were forcing it through broken speakers. It came from everywhere. Inside the cabin, inside the air. I gripped the wheel tighter. The laugh rose higher, not playful, not cruel, just delighted, like it was enjoying this. I checked the rear view. Nothing but the streak of road behind. The glass shook. The mirror trembled. And for the briefest second, I thought I saw it leaning between the back seats. I didn't look again. I couldn't. The laugh swelled until it filled the car. It didn't echo, it just sat heavy in the air, bouncing off the inside of my skull. I whispered to myself to drown it out. But the words vanished, swallowed by that jagged rhythm. My throat dried. My pulse throbbed in my hands. Still, I kept driving. The road narrowed. Hills rose on both sides. The world closed in, and the laugh softened, as if whoever, or whatever, had leaned closer, breathing against my ear. I tried the radio, desperate for static, for anything. The dial spun. Every station cracked open into the same broken chuckle. Different pitches, layered voices, high, low, all mismatched, tumbling over each other. It sounded less human the longer it went on, like glass shattering, like teeth chattering in the cold, like someone chewing on their own throat. I slammed the dial off. The cabin fell to silence, but the silence wasn't right. It pressed against me, thick, like the air itself was holding its breath. I kept my eyes on the lines, painted on the road. White, yellow, white. They guided me forward, as if nothing could reach across them. And then, in the distance, the lines bent, curved sharp, into a hairpin turn. I slowed, wheels screaming against the asphalt. The laugh rose again, closer than ever. I almost swerved, but when I came around the corner, there was nothing. Just another stretch of night. The fields had given way to trees now, pale trunks flashing through the headlights, each one like a face turned toward me. The laughter slipped lower, not loud, but steady, almost like humming, almost like it was patient. I didn't know how much longer the road went, how much further I could drive, but I knew it was still with me, somewhere between the glass, the mirrors, the dark, waiting for me to slow, waiting for me to breathe wrong, waiting for me to blink. And even as the engine began to calm, even as the night pressed cool against the windshield, that soft laugh lingered, like it was already in my chest, like it would never quite leave. The highway was empty. A pale fog drifted low across the asphalt. My headlights cut through it, but only just. It was late autumn, a little after midnight. The road stretched endlessly, no signs, no other cars, and then I saw it, a green exit sign, crooked, faded letters. Not listed on any map, I remembered. The arrow pointed left, toward a road that looked too narrow, too dark. I don't know why I turned. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was curiosity. But the wheels shifted beneath my hands, and the main road disappeared behind me. The new road was cracked. Edges crumbled into weeds. My tires hummed against it, louder than felt natural, that I drove slowly, hoping for a gas station, a light, anything. But what I found was a town, at least. It looked like one. A main street stretched ahead, shops on either side, but no neon, no glow in the windows. Every building was dark, every door closed. I rolled the car to a stop, turned off the engine, and the silence settled in around me. No wind, no insects, not even the tick of cooling metal, just silence. I stepped out. My shoes clicked on the uneven pavement. The air was colder here, as if the fog had seeped into my lungs. The street stretched ahead, empty, straight, to perfect. And then I saw movement at the very end of the road. A figure standing still. They lifted their arm and waved. The gesture was slow, too slow, like the arm was heavy or stiff. I froze. My breath caught. The figure didn't move closer, didn't shout, just waved. The silence pressed against me, like static, without the sound. I wanted to leave, to turn back, but when I looked over my shoulder, the highway wasn't there. The road behind me was gone. Swallowed by fog, only the town remained, and the figure, still waving. I walked forward. Careful, my footsteps echoed in ways that didn't feel right. Too sharp, too loud for an empty street. Shops passed on either side. Glass windows faintly reflecting my face. But inside, nothing. Shelves bare, rooms hollow. The air smelled faintly of dust, and something older. Like pages left too long in a basement dot, the figure kept waving. No closer, no farther. By the time I reached halfway down the street, I realized something. They weren't waving hello. The arm never bent at the elbow. It only swayed side to side, like a pendulum, like something hanging. My throat tightened. I slowed. That's when I noticed. There were no shadows. Not from the buildings. Not from me. Just the pale, colorless glow of fog. I stopped. The figure stopped too. Their arm frozen mid-swing. The silence deepened, like the whole town was holding its breath. I turned, tried a door, locked another, locked. The glass was cold against my fingertips, as if no warmth had touched it in years. When I turned back, the figure was closer, not walking, just nearer, like the space between us had folded. Its arm rose again, swaying side to side. The air pressed heavy in my chest. Every instinct told me not to move, and still, I stepped back. That's when I saw the sign above one of the shops. Rusty letters, unreadable, but the wood beneath looked freshly painted, like someone had tried to keep it alive. My heart pounded. The figure's arm swayed faster now. Not a wave, a warning. The silence cracked, just faintly, like a whisper behind glass. I couldn't tell if it was in my ears or in my head. I stumbled back toward the car. The street stretched longer than before. Every step felt doubled, like the ground repeated itself. When I finally reached the edge, the fog had lifted just enough. The road out appeared again, empty. I didn't look back. Not at the shops. Not at the figure. I got in. Turned the key. The engine hummed. Too loud in the silence. The tires gripped. The road unfolded, and the town fell away behind me. Back on the highway, the sign was gone. No crooked pole. No faded letters, just black trees. And the endless stretch of asphalt. I drove until morning. And even now, when the night is quiet enough, I still see that arm swinging side to side, not waving, not greeting, just warning. It was past midnight. The highway stretched ahead, a pale ribbon under the dim orange lamps. My headlights cut through the fog in narrow beams. The world felt empty, but in the rearview mirror, a pair of headlights clung to me. Not too close, not too far, always steady. At first I thought nothing of it. A driver, just like me, pushing through the late hours. But minutes passed, then miles, and the car was still there. Every time I changed lanes, it shifted too. Every curve of the road it mirrored, not rushing, not slowing, just there. The hum of my engine grew louder in my head. I rolled the window down slightly. Cold night air slipped inside. The fog tasted like damp metal. I told myself to breathe. I told myself it was nothing. But suspicion crept in, slowly, like water seeping through a crack. I flicked my blinker, exited toward an empty rest stop. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I pulled in. For a moment, the headlights followed, but then they dimmed. I stopped, engine still running. The air was heavy with silence. I turned to watch. The dark vehicle rolled forward, and then it was gone. No engine fading away, no tires retreating, just gone. I stepped out. The gravel shifted beneath my shoes. The fog was thick, curling around the lamps overhead. I peered down the empty road. Nothing but the pale smear of mist, and then soft footsteps. Not behind me, not ahead, but circling slow, measured, crunching lightly against the gravel, always moving, never stopping. My throat tightened. I turned, but the fog swallowed everything. The lamps hummed, glowing weak and pale. I whispered to myself, it has to be the wind. Just the wind, but the footsteps pressed closer, shifting in rhythm, sometimes near my left shoulder, sometimes brushing faintly at my right, always just outside the corner of my eye. I wanted to call out, but the words stuck. Even my breaths seemed too loud in that silence. I took a step back toward my car. The gravel crunched under me. The other steps stopped. The stillness was worse than the sound, an emptiness that pressed against my chest. Like something was waiting, watching. I reached for the handle. My reflection in the glass was pale, blurred by the mist. Behind me, the footsteps started again, soft, dragging slightly now. Slow circles around the car. I didn't look. I couldn't. I slipped inside, locking the door with shaking fingers. The key trembled in the ignition, but I hesitated. Through the windshield, the fog pressed in, and for the briefest second, I thought I saw a shape, a darker shadow inside the mist. Standing still, I blinked. It was gone. The air inside the car felt colder than outside. I turned the engine on. The hum broke the silence, but not the dread. I stared at the rearview mirror, waiting for headlights. There were none. Only a pale, empty road, but faintly beneath the sound of the engine. The crunch of footsteps still circled, as if the fog itself was walking. I pressed the gas, rolled back onto the highway. The tires hummed against the pavement. My heart thudded in rhythm. Mile after mile passed. The rearview remained empty, but the sense of being followed never left. It sat beside me, breathing softly. The fog thickened again. The lines on the road blurred into a grey wash, and then a flicker of headlights. Far behind, too far to see clearly, but steady, unmoving. I told myself not to look back anymore. Eyes forward. Just drive. But the mirror kept pulling me, and every time I looked, the lights were there, sometimes faint, sometimes close, always in the same place. The highway stretched on endlessly, mile markers blurred. Time felt thin, like I'd been driving for hours or only minutes. And though I couldn't hear them anymore, I could still feel those footsteps, circling, always circling. The hum of the tires carried me through the night. Fog pressing against the glass, breath clouding in front of me, and the headlights patient, watching. Never gone, somewhere out there in the mist. Something walked with me still, and it never fell behind. The road was empty, not the kind of empty you see late at night, but the kind that feels abandoned, like it had been forgotten by time itself. The air was heavy, summer heat still clinging after sunset. Cicadas droned somewhere far off, but here, on this stretch, it was silent. I had been driving too long. The horizon kept repeating itself. Same line of trees, same gravel shoulder, same pale strip of asphalt unspooling into darkness. I almost didn't notice them at first. A figure standing in the middle of the road, waving, their arm lifted slowly, back and forth, like a warning or a plea. I slowed down. The headlights washed over them, and my stomach dropped. They were wearing my shirt, the faded one with the frayed collar, jeans creased the same way mine were, and in their hand, a ring of car keys swinging softly by car keys. I braked too hard. The tires hissed against gravel. The steering wheel shuddered in my grip. The figure stepped closer into the full glow of the lights, and I saw my own face, not a reflection, not a trick of glass. It was me standing out there. My pulse pounded in my ears. The other me raised a hand, palm flat, as if to tell me to stop. I rolled down the window halfway. The night air was thick, damp. I could smell dust and the faint sweetness of honeysuckle. Then it spoke, the same voice I carry inside my throat, same tone, same quiet rasp. Turn around. The words were soft, barely more than breath. Turn around before it wears your face. I couldn't answer. My tongue felt numb. My hands locked on the wheel. The other me stepped closer, just beyond the hood. Their eyes looked wide, brighter than mine ever were. You don't understand, they whispered. It's close. It's watching. The cicadas had gone quiet. All I could hear was the engine idling, a low hum, pressing against the silence. Behind them, just past the bend in the road, something shifted. At first I thought it was fog, a pale shimmer rising out of the ditch, but it clung too tight like skin that didn't fit. The shape stretched, folded, then settled back into the trees. My double turned sharply, eyes fixed on that movement, then back at me. You have to go. It already tried once. It will keep trying, until it finds the right way in. I felt sweat bead at my temples. The wheel slipped under my palms. I don't, my voice cracked. But the words didn't leave. The other me shook their head. No questions. You'll know when it happens. You'll hear it first. The cicadas still hadn't returned. The world felt hollow, as if it was holding its breath. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Only my own face staring back. But for a second, I thought the reflection lingered too long, not matching the tilt of my head. I jerked my gaze back forward, and the other me was already backing away. Their eyes wide, urgent, flicked toward the trees. That shifting shape had drawn closer, a ripple of pale light sliding along the ditch. Almost liquid, almost human. I started the car rolling again, slow, confused. My double lifted their hand one last time, not waving, pleading. Please, they whispered. Don't let it wear your face. The headlights swept over them as I drove past. For a split second, their skin looked thinner, like it was lit from the inside, and their features, my features, blurred at the edges. The figures stayed in the rear view until the bend. Then, gone. I didn't look back again. The road behind me was just darkness. The trees pressed close, black against black, but I kept thinking about what they said, that I'd hear it first. For miles, I drove with the radio off, the windows up, my breath shallow, listening. The hum of the tires grew softer, steady, almost like a voice, repeating itself, like an echo I couldn't place. And with each passing mile, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe, by now, something else was sitting here in the car with me, wearing skin that looks like mine. The road was empty again, that same stretch of highway, the same pale fog drifting low over the asphalt. I felt as though I had never left this place. The lines on the road blurred, then sharpened, flickering in the dim glow of the headlights, like they had been painted just for me. I kept driving. For how long? I couldn't tell anymore. Nights had folded into each other. The clock on the dashboard no longer made sense. Minutes, hours, none of it stayed still. It always led me back here. The same mile, the same trees leaning in, their branches curved like ribs. My breath fogged the inside of the windshield. I wiped it with the back of my hand, but the glass never cleared. The hum of the engine felt softer now, almost like it wasn't running at all, as though the car itself was gliding forward on something unseen. I leaned back against the seat, exhaustion heavy in my bones, but there was nowhere to stop. I had tried before, pulling over, stepping out into the silence, and each time, when I walked forward through the fog, I would find myself back in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel again. Circles, always circles. The mile stretched long, the horizon never shifting. Except tonight, there was something new, a figure, far ahead in the pale distance, still waiting, taller than the trees themselves, its outline bending the fog around it, not moving, but smiling. I could feel it, even before the headlights reached it. The curve of that grin pressed inside my chest. I slowed the car, but the tires whispered across the asphalt on their own, pulling me closer. I wanted to close my eyes, but I couldn't. Every blink was shallow. Every breath, thin dot the shape, loomed higher, a shadow stitched into the mist, too tall to be human, too narrow to be a tree, and yet, familiar. It leaned forward slightly, as though listening, as though it knew every word that had ever left my mouth. The smile stretched wide, not teeth, not quite, just a pale curve glowing faintly against the dark. I thought about leaving the road, turning into the forest, crashing through branches and roots just to get away, but I knew what would happen. I would circle back, the trees would open, and the highway would be waiting for me again. The same mile, the same fog, the same figure. I gripped the wheel tighter, skin cold against the leather. The dashboard lights flickered, then dimmed, until the car was nothing but shadow. Only the road remained. And that smile, I realized then, it wasn't blocking my way. It wasn't even waiting for me. It had always been walking beside me, step for step, and now, it had simply chosen to be seen. The fog thinned for just a moment, enough for the moon to glow faintly on the asphalt. enough for me to see the endless stretch behind me. No beginning, no end, just this last mile. Looping through the dark dot, my breath steadied, my fear softened, and something inside me let go. The smile in the distance curved wider, almost kind, almost like it was welcoming me home. The wheel turned gently under my hands. I didn't fight it. The car moved forward, slowly, into the fog that waited, pale and endless. I knew now. There was no escape, no waking from this drive. Only the road, only the silence, only that figure, waiting at the last mile. And still, I kept going, because somehow, in the hollow rhythm of it all, I finally understood. I was never lost. I was already where I was meant to be.